Do you think that, so to go back to his second point,
Mhm.
is Saudi Arabia better than MLS? Do you think that where they're at right now, with all the players they brought in, that they're a better team, they're a better league?
I'm going to say this without a biased bone in my body. No, they're not better. I think MLS has a system, they have a structure, they have a plan. Saudi Arabia is just throwing money and trying to get whoever they can in. I I I know you mentioned this before, kind of as a joke, but I did pull up like the transfer. I wanted to look at the transfer numbers for Saudi Arabia MLS, and I pulled up China as well.
Mm-hmm.
The similarities between China and Saudi Arabia are striking. It's exactly the same basically as what China had done. All of their top transfers for China was in like that 2015 to like 2017 time period. They brought in guys in their prime. They brought in Oscar. He was like 25 when he came in. Hulk came in, he was 29. Paulinho 30, Jackson Martinez 29. Like these guys were still big names. Yannick Carrasco 24. Like these guys were, you're not bringing in guys that were even like in retirement mode. They were coming over because they were getting huge paychecks. So this is just feeling like the exact same thing. The top transfers for the Saudi league on transfer market, the 1 through 7 was all in this offseason. And they brought in guys in their prime, just like China did. Ruben Neves, Milinkovic Savic, Jota, Seko Fofana. Like there's
I
good
didn't even
players
know
that they
half
brought
of
in.
those people made the move because I said that they were all retired. I didn't realize half of those people even went.
Yeah, I definitely heard a lot about Jota and Neves because that's everybody's argument. They're like, if you say anything about like, oh, they're bringing like 38-year-old Ronaldo, 35-year-old Neves, like all these players that are past it, they'll be like, oh, well, they brought in Ruben Neves and Jota, and they're young and they're playing well, um, which is great. And credit where it's due. Like Ruben Neves is a top player, and they brought him in at his prime to play in their league, and I think that's great for them. Uh, but it's exactly like China, and where to the exact point you made before, where's the Chinese league now? None of their top arrivals are still there's I'm scrolling through right now. Out of the top 25, none of them, there are zero transfers from 2020 or later in their top 25 record arrivals,
Yeah.
because it wasn't able to sustain it. There was no sustainability. And I think it's going to be the exact same thing here. You brought in some great players, Ruben Neves, Milinkovic Savic. Like these are guys that are in their prime. They're pretty big names, but I don't think they're going to be able to just continue to do this forever. You're not going to see Kev De Bruyne go move from Man City right now to go play in the Saudi league, because he could still make tons of money and he could play with the best of the best and be on the highest stage. Um, and also, I took a look at departures, like sales, you know, that to me is where I see sustainability. That to me shows a league that's going to be able to continue to sell and continue to reinvest. And the Saudi Pro League, in terms of just numbers, definitely is lower than MLS. But the biggest thing for me was where they were selling their players. So for one, in their top 10 sales that they've made, it's about 50-50 as to sales during or later than 2020 and sales before 2020. Their top four are all from 2015 or earlier. So it was like a long time back. Their highest actually past that point, number five, funny enough, was to FCC. They're the brand new player that they brought in.
Bupen,
Yeah,
Bupenza?
Bupenza.
Yeah,
Yeah. He's the number 5 record
that's
departure for the Saudi
crazy.
league. Uh, but if you look at the teams that they've sold to, you have to go down to number 12 to find the first like European team that they sold to, and it's Granada. It's not a big team. They've sold majority of their top 10 sales are within the Saudi Pro League. There's one to MLS, there's one to Liga MX, there's one to Brazil, and there's one to the United Arab Emirates. The rest are all within the Saudi Pro League. And then if you go look at MLS, for example, look at their top 10 departures: Newcastle, Aston Villa, Augsburg, funnily enough, Al Nasser,
No,
Bayern.
that's PT.
Yeah, that's PT.
Yeah.
Bayern, RB Salzburg, Chelsea, West Brom, Watford, Villarreal. And if I go a little bit first past that, past the top 10, it's Roma, Man City, Wolfsburg, Arsenal. Like the names, these are the top teams in the world. MLS is selling to the top teams and the top leagues in the world. And they're going to continue to be able to do that because they've built a sustainable system here. So MLS is going to outlast Saudi Arabia. They're going to continue to improve, and they're going to continue to be better than Saudi Arabia. And that doesn't change because you've brought in a couple of players in their prime and a couple of players who were massively declining.
I think that, like I said, I'm a numbers guy. You know that. I think that's a great point. Oh, our boy Kaku's on the list. Awesome.
Yeah, Kaku was on the list.
But
They
that's the
just
thing.
sold him to
I don't know
UAE.
I don't know any of these players. Um, and I'm sure not a lot of people know the MLS players either. I'm not trying to you know, highlight that we're massive globally, right?
Now,
But
you know some of those players. Alfonso Davies is the best left back in the world.
correct. And like I said, I know some of them, but I'm not trying to say that MLS is so far clear that we're massive worldwide. But I think you put up a really good point where look at the leagues that are looking at us versus looking at them, and look at how they're looking at us, right? Saudi Arabia is the purchaser from the Euro League for anybody that they want. Where the Euro leagues are looking at us to take our players, right? And you can argue one way or the other that one's better than the other. Personally, I'd rather be the one that's developing and selling because, as you mentioned, that's sustainable. Unless the Saudi government wants to take all of their oil money and put it into buying players from overseas and trying to make it work, go for it. But I agree with you that the longevity of it is better supported by being the seller versus the buyer.
What
Um,
are they going to do? Are they just going to continue to throw money and try to convince people to come over? That's what China tried to do. It didn't work for them. I just don't see it working this time. I don't know. I don't think 38-year-old Cristiano Ronaldo, as much as he may think it in his mind, is going to change that.
Correct. And as I mentioned, right, I think the Saudi League is better than what people give it credit for, right? I don't watch it, you don't watch it. Most people don't watch it. However, based off of their World Cup performance and the way that I've seen them play, I think that they are better than what they are. And I also believe that their top teams are probably better than MLS's top teams because they're literally funded by the Saudi government. They are buying the top, I think it's the top four teams. It's like Al Hilal, Al Ittihad, and then two others are government controlled, and the government is just handing them hundreds of millions of dollars to buy players. You are going to bring in some serious talent there. If you put that team that took Koulibaly, Milinkovic, Savic, Ronaldo, like all those guys together, and you put up against LAFC, it's close. I think they might get out. It might be a 7-3 split in the best of 10, 6-4. But I do think that they're a little bit better. But as you mentioned, and one of the things that I see, it's a spread between top to bottom. And that's another thing that a lot of people don't understand is like when you're comparing these teams like the Championship, Belgian Pro League, Scotland, all these teams that are second tier, everybody thinks of those leagues as two teams, maybe three, and then completely disregard the bottom half, which are nowhere near what they probably should be. And Saudi Arabia is the same way. You can see that it really doesn't mean anything either that the government is running these teams because Ronaldo didn't win the league last year. He got walked by a La Liga team in preseason, which he himself called not a good league.
Mm-hmm. They just to add on top of that, they also got walked by a Portuguese team. They got beat 4-1 by Benfica.
Jesus. And again, top teams, right? Benfica is a top team in Portugal, and I think it was Celta Vigo. Celta Vigo is not a great team. They're not a bad team. If you put the top team in MLS versus the top team in Saudi Arabia, like I mentioned, Saudi Arabia probably win. But if you put the number 6 team in MLS against the number 6 team in Saudi Arabia, it's not even close. Like MLS walks. If you're telling me I need to pick between, let's just pull it up here.
I want to add something in
Go
because I
ahead, you
just
do
found
that. Do
this and
that.
I think it's hilarious.
Do it.
Celta Vigo, the same team that just beat Ronaldo's team 5-0, played against San Jose in July of 2022. This is back when San Jose was garbage, by the way, for those that don't know. It was 1-1. So all I'm saying is San Jose managed to draw when they were one of the worst teams in MLS. Meanwhile, Ronaldo's team, who was second place in the Saudi League, got smashed 5-0.
So
I rest my case.
so the current, I'm gonna have to change this because the current number 6 team in the Supporters Shield standings is LAFC, and we've used them already. So I'll go to Nashville. If you're asking me, would I pick Nashville over Al Fetteha, whose best player according to Transfer Market is, I'm sorry, Al Fate. I pronounced that incorrectly, and I apologize. Um, oh, there was a dash in there. I had to put a dash in there. Whose best player is market valued at $3 million. Also has Christian Teo.
Oh,
Okay, right? But their best player is market valued at $3 million, and then it drops off. So they've got 3 players valued over $1 million. Everybody's 800 or less. And then you look at Nashville, who's running with Hani Mukhtar, who would run that team by himself because he runs every other team by himself. Um, Hani Mukhtar, flanked with Randall Leal, Walker Zimmerman, Sean Davis, Jack Mayer. I mean, we all know where Jack Mayer lives, and he's still tearing it up. Crazy. Jack Moore in there. Like the vast majority of MLS teams outside of those top 4 are so far clear. And that is the conversation needs to be had. Are we going to sit here and say, oh, the top 4 teams make up a league? Because I think that's disingenuous, but I don't know. I'm saying that it's not really clear in terms of league versus league, top versus top, and it's always been this way. Has been tough. Our top teams are likely not as good as other league top teams because of the parity, because of the roster rules, whatever you want to claim it to. But our middle of the pack, hell, our number 6 versus anybody else's number 6, miles clear.
I don't even honestly, I don't even think necessarily that the top Saudi teams would be better than MLS teams. They have a couple of big players. Like if I just pulled up, I think it's Al Hilal.
Mm-hmm.
They were the top team in terms of value. That's mainly because they brought in Neves and Milinkovic-Savic, who have 90 million in value between the two of them. That's only 2 players.
Right.
Their next highest is Koulibaly. And I'm a Chelsea fan. I watched Koulibaly last season. He was dreadful. You're not bringing in an in-prime straight from Napoli Kalidou Koulibaly. You're bringing in 32-year-old Koulibaly who just came off a dreadful season with Chelsea. So this team, I think it's completely possible that MLS teams could compete and beat the top teams in the Saudi League.
So
And then the argument is completely gone for the Saudi League because our bottom teams realistically should walk the bottom teams in Saudi Arabia.
correct. And here's the thing. I'm thinking like the bottom teams are likely as bad as the bottom teams in Saudi Arabia, right? Like there's probably one team in MLS that is just so bad. I'm not going to drop names, but likely so bad that anybody could beat them on any given day, right? But you had mentioned the way I see those top teams right now is that they're being run very, very similarly to MLS teams, right? They've got 4 or 5 good players. The rest are kind of the bang average. Like we have a bunch of DPs, and the rest are good average, right? So that's why I'm saying I think the top teams are, and I'm not saying they blow them out. I'm not saying it's 10-0 over 4 games, like it's not even close. I think it's close, but I think that the top players have the better chance to be successful, right? So those big name players have the better chance to make an impact And again, the biggest thing that I've noticed is you don't see a lot of strikers or attacking players going there, to my knowledge.
No,
Right.
I think that's accurate,
So
except
you're
Ronaldo and
right.
Benzema.
Yeah, right. Those are the two big ones, but it's not like every one of those teams is getting a massive, in prime guy. It's you're asking them to be controlled from the midfield and the back, which is interesting. So yeah, I'm not super stressed. Like I said, I think it'd be close. I think I'd probably give them the edge right now. But here's the other thing: we're about to lose our roster rules. Not lose, but we're about to open them up. Game changer, game changer,
It's
and
not going
that's
to be a
not a
conversation
conversation.
at that point.
Right. That's not a conversation for today either, by the way. But that's a big topic as well.
Yeah, I still think MLS teams would, if you matched up all the teams, I guess like play them, I don't know, 10 times, I think MLS teams would still win majority of them. I think the Saudi teams could definitely be better than a bunch of MLS teams, but I still think our best would still beat their best
Right. And
and in like a 10 game series.
I'm watching New England here, and I just saw them put together a passing sequence against a high pressing Red Bull side that would rival any team in any league. I mean, just so calm on the ball and moving it. But um, and it really comes down to this, right? If you're building a league, what do you want? Do you want to be top heavy? Do you want to be medium heavy? Right. And that's the difference between the two leagues right now. You say the Saudi league is better. The Saudi league is top heavy. It's got four teams, government
Extremely top heavy, by the
right,
way.
four teams, government controlled. The second you get to team five, team six, fall off the face of the earth. Where MLS, because of the way that we were structured, is median heavy. The middle group of our teams is it's large, right? We've got a large median, and they're all relatively successful and strong.
Mm-hmm.
How do you want to do that? And again, you can argue one way or the other, which I've seen people all over the place argue, you know, super teams make great leagues. That's why England is so good. That's why Spain is so good because Real Madrid and Barcelona. I disagree. I don't like watching leagues like that because outside of this year, nearly every single European league is done by February, give or take, right? Bundesliga is usually done by Christmas. There's no reason to even watch it, except for this year. This year was a good year. I can go back and track it, but you always end up with the same three or four teams in the mix. It's boring. And that's why top heavy isn't exciting for me. Where our league, median heavy, everybody's got a chance. It's more exciting that way to me personally. Again, some people may disagree. I don't care. I truly don't care.